Well, with us now are Terry Smith of the brokerage Tullett Preborn and Lord Steele, leader of the Liberal Party that supported the Callaghan government in the late 70s. Terry Smith, how worried are you about the state of this country, or incipient state?
Very worried indeed. I think it's in a position that can only be achieved by something close to criminal negligence. Having got to the point of having a massive deficit at the top of a boom, we're not in any great shape to really fund the deficit that's necessary at the moment for the conditions we're in.
And why would a hung parliament make that any worse?
I don't actually think a hung parliament is the primary consideration. I think the primary consideration is whether any party has got a credible plan for cutting the deficit, but a hung parliament might make it worse. I think the thing that people would most fear there is that it might lead to a second election in short time, and therefore you'd see further electioneering rather than taking difficult decisions by politicians.
Now, Lord Steele, David Steele, do you would accept that a hung parliament would add a level of uncertainty at the very least? And
let me begin with agreeing with Terry on that last point. If you have a parliament with no overall majority, what I call a balanced parliament, if the minority government is then running for the next election as soon as possible, that in our present financial situation is a disaster.
Yes,
I quite agree. Yeah. But if in fact you have mature people, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Nick Clegg, actually working together in some way to form a coherent government, as they have in Germany. You know, it's not a weak economy, they have a coalition government.
But I'd go back to my initial point, which is actually I don't think any of the parties at the moment, the real problem is none of the parties have a credible plan to cut the deficit.
We're stuck with the parties we've got.
If you put up pictures of Alistair Darling, Vince Cable, the other fellow, Osborne, and asked people who would they like to have influence over our future finances, they go for Cable.
I'd go for Cable as well.
Exactly.
As it happens.
Well, there you are. So if in fact the Liberal Democrats have an input into the next government, that's probably what most
I think he might be the best of a bad bunch, though, because I think I rather think there are, if I may say so, there are 5 things that the market's looking for in terms of credibility from somebody to handle this, which is bigger cuts than anybody's being honest about at the moment. You cannot do it with the cuts that are being described. Just give me a second.
You're to the right of the Tory party.
No, I'm just being realistic, because the assumption is that the growth's going to come through to fund taxes, and it's not going to happen on the scale people think. Something that's immediate, not something that's in a year like Nick Clegg says. It has to be immediate, I think, for the markets. This is the most important point. Something specific. It's no good just naming a number. You have to say what you'll cut, otherwise nobody believes you.
OK, three is enough to be going on.
3 is enough for you. Okay, I'll give you a couple of
What about Lord Steele's point, though, that there are moments when things are really bad, that people feel what we need is some sort of national unity government. Now, you don't rate any of these, any of the political leaders. You rate on the economic front one slightly more than you rate the other two. Isn't that an argument for some sort of deal?
First of all, I rate him quite a lot more. I mean, and I'll tell you the reasons for it. First of all, he said that nothing is ring-fenced, including the NHS, which I think is a very honest statement that nobody else has made. And secondly, he's admitted you can't tax your way out of this. You can't tax your way to prosperity.
You're talking about Vince Cable.
I'm talking about Vince Cable.
Yeah, well, the problem is the Lib Dems are all over the shop on this. That some of them say there could be cuts anywhere.
I'm talking about him specifically.
Others say there won't be cuts in the NHS, in schools and international development.
But I'm talking about Vince Cable specifically, and I think he is the best man.
Perhaps he's a prince among men, but the broad principle.
Let me come back to the principle, because on that clip that we saw, somebody was talking about minority governments and the effect on markets. Let me just remind you as a fact that in 1977, when I signed that deal with Jim Callaghan, the pound rose immediately. Why? Because there was parliamentary stability. While under the influence of the IMF, we got inflation.
I don't disagree with you on that. I would like.
We showed it works.
Lord Steele, I would point out though, 1977 is about as far removed in financial markets from here as the 18th century coffee houses. We still had exchange control until 1979.
I accept your wisdom on that.
So I think.
But the effect was good. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and I don't disagree with you. I said it in my opening statement. I said to you, I don't think a hung parliament is the primary problem. I think it could still cause an additional level of problem. The primary problem is the lack of a credible plan to cut the deficit from any part.
So you think all the political solutions are rubbish. However, they're the only ones we've got.
We need somebody to be honest. And I think the nearest thing we've got is indeed Mr. Cable.
Well, thank you very much. We can agree on that. End of discussion.
That's a result for you.
I said the nearest we've got. I mean, even there, I mean, I don't think the number is big enough. I'm sorry. I really don't think it is.
Well,
and secondly, you need to go on to my points where I never got beyond the 3. It needs to be absolutely specific. I think people don't believe you if you say 15 billion or 20 billion, not 15 billion, and then you don't say where it's going to fall, because then you get to, oh, it'll be efficiency gains. People want to be credible. You have to say, I will cut the following.
I wonder if you, though, prescribing to, I'm loath as I am to defend politicians, I wonder if you don't feel slightly awkward that it's people in the financial services who got us into this mess who are now prepared to sermonise at us about how we get out of it.
With the greatest respect, I didn't get you into this mess. My company's never had any government aid. It's profitable. You'll have to ask them, not me.
Terry, you move in those circles. You know, you move among the moneyed people. You're one of them yourself, and yet you expect us politicians to pull you out of the mess.
No, I don't expect you. My company's never accepted any aid. Excuse me. But look, it's not me speaking on behalf of financial services, although you've sort of invited me to here. I think it was Larry Sumner in the United States who said when he's reincarnated, he doesn't want to come back as Mike Tyson or Godzilla or something. He wants to come back as the bond market, because the bond market's really scary because it tells everybody what to do. It's not people in financial services, it's not the talking heads you saw there on the screen earlier that are dictating this. It's the international markets, which now, post the end of exchange control, it's the foreign exchange markets and the international bond markets which will dictate whether the solution is credible.
Right, and they will take fright at a hung parliament.
I think they'll take extra fright at a hung parliament if not. I think a hung parliament can be perfectly viable for all the good reasons Lord Steele says.
Yeah.
Their concern will be if they don't think it's an enduring solution, if they think that people continue to not find the credible solution.
It's got to be an enduring solution, not a dash to a quick election.
I quite agree. That's the main point about it.
Thank you both. Thanks. Now.